Are there other members who would like to speak to the motion 13? Calgary Mountain View.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. An honour to reply to the government's first budget. These are difficult times for Albertans, and in these dire economic circumstances, after taking several months to prepare, it was this government's responsibility to bring forward a budget that would not only stimulate new growth in our economy, but would also tackle the root of the problem and get us off our perpetual ride on the resource revenue roller coaster. But Albertans didn't vote for ideology. They voted for a thoughtful, evidence-based set of decisions around an uncertain future. While there is some good and much that I support in this budget, including the infrastructure stimulus, this budget simply does not do enough to stimulate and diversify our economy, especially for small and medium businesses. After decades of PC mismanagement, $11.6 billion, more than any other province, given back to the richest corporations and individuals just last year, our economy and our budget has become so reliant on a single commodity that is ongoing with low oil price environments and constitutes a full economic crisis. We've seen more than 40,000 job losses from the energy sector alone. The lack of vision and discipline and a fair tax regime by the PC government has left us in this mess. We are seeing firsthand, as residents of this province, I dare say that each of us has a friend, family member or neighbour who's been seeing their job affected in the ongoing crisis. I know I've been hearing a great deal of concern, especially from small business. These job losses are not mere statistics. Each represents families trying to put food on the table, employment opportunities for young people, trying to get started and pay off student loans, and these prospects appear to be fading. This was the context in which this new government has brought forward this first budget and asked for the approval of the House. As a physician, Mr. Speaker, I know the difference between treating symptoms and treating the cause. Treatments that cure the disease. I'm afraid that looking at this budget through this lens, it simply manages our over-reliances on oil revenues. It does not cure it. That is crystal clear in this government's plan to get back to surplus. It's based on hope and prayers that the oil prices will rebound. So we shouldn't be surprised that the government has had to change its balanced budget prediction twice. Their prediction depends entirely on their ability to successfully predict the future of the price of oil. I dare say that, with the greatest respect to the Finance Minister, his crystal ball is no clearer than mine or our colleagues in the opposition parties here, or our predecessors. Nor, by the way, Mr. Speaker, is it any clearer for any of the opposition parties. Unless we fix the over-reliance on oil, we are just shooting at moving targets in the dark. To stimulate and diversify our economy, the Liberals called on the government to take action in 4 key areas. 1, a responsible increase in infrastructure spending. Number 2, real help for small business. Number 3, incentives for private sector to create new green technologies. And number 4, avoid borrowing for operating costs through a rigorous review of the public sector and all public spending, and ensure that we're getting value for money, including collaborating with non-profit organizations, non-government organizations, planning and budgeting with that sector to improve our effectiveness in public services. This government has not properly addressed these key areas while increasing taxes and fees in a way that could negatively will add to the burden of our middle class and lower class. Our children also deserve stability of a growing heritage fund, rather than the ongoing pilfering which we have criticized the PCs for over the years, leaving the heritage fund worth even less than it was in 1982 when Peter Lougheed left office. With respect to infrastructure stimulus and diversification, there's absolutely no question now is the time to build. Interest rates are low. After decades of neglect and years of rapid population growth, the need has never been greater. By any estimate, Alberta has tens of billions of dollars in infrastructure needs, including roads, schools, hospitals, housing, and public transit. We need a new hospital in West Edmonton and a new modern medical laboratory desperately. We need hundreds of new schools throughout the province and upgrading in many. We are a decade past needing a cancer centre in Calgary. It looks like we'll have to wait another decade for that. Our major cities are waiting to see if the province will pay its share on badly needed public transit projects, like the Green Line in Calgary and the west leg of the Valley Line here in Edmonton, so that we can avoid gridlock. We also require thousands of new, affordable and seniors housing units that will offer seniors and those with disabilities a dignified way of life and take pressure off our healthcare system. As many of you know, I've been hearing from the mental health and addicted caregivers in our society and those suffering from mental health and addictions. Housing is the #1 issue that keeps people on the street. There's no question that this has to become a higher priority at all 3 levels of government, federal, provincial and municipal. We must start planning and budgeting together at these 3 levels if we're going to deal with this ongoing sore in our society that is costing us billions of dollars by not addressing it effectively. In addition, our existing infrastructure continues to crumble and requires an ongoing maintenance budget. These are huge challenges for a new government that has been given no budget to work with. This is why I was prepared to support the government's debt financing with new infrastructure projects to get Alberta companies and Albertans back to work, building the projects we know we need. Sadly, the government has presented a plan that's too vague to be considered responsible, and there's no clear debt repayment plan to outline how and when the government would repay the necessary debt we're taking on. In fact, the government rejects such plan until they hit their ever-moving resource-reliant balanced budget target. We can't support that, Mr. Speaker. It can make good financial sense to refinance your mortgage to do renovations, but not without a plan for repayment. The government is also refusing to release an infrastructure priority list to demonstrate that spending is really based on need and not on political interest or timing. We look forward to that public sunshine list of priorities. My friend, the Minister of Infrastructure, has been in this place a long time, I think since the beginning of the legislature. He knows full well that the public interest is not served by political timing and politically prioritized infrastructure projects. That's why he promised an infrastructure priority list. I was just checking to see if anybody was listening.
Every word.
Yet, right in the middle of the session, this government is making new infrastructure announcements every other day. Why no open list of infrastructure? Clearly, the government has prioritized these projects for announcements, so let's see it. Without these additional details, I can't support, in all confidence, an infrastructure spending plan. With respect to small business support, the government is simply not doing enough to help. With respect, grants of $5,000 per new employee are a business subsidy. They are not sustainable, and they do not create new jobs. A tax break, on the other hand, would be a sustainable stimulus for small businesses and help get a long-term commitment to innovation and jobs and an economy growth. To their credit, this new government has taken some positive steps, directing ATB to provide more loans and providing funds for startup investments where the risk is low in terms of the public interest. This makes sense. But these steps won't do enough to help small businesses that are struggling today. Over 85% of businesses in Alberta are defined as small, having less than $500,000 profit in a given year. They are the key to diversifying our economy and creating jobs. But they are struggling hard in this economy. At the same time, the government is pushing their costs up with higher minimum wage, whose rate of increase surely needs to be tied to our economic reality, not simply dictated on the basis of a number that projects well into the next 3 years without any basis for assessing the impact of the earlier increases in minimum wage. We need to take that into consideration. These businesses also face higher insurance costs. When you're a small entrepreneur, those revenues going down, whose revenues are going down and costs are going up. It's difficult to stay afloat today in Alberta. Fear is a vicious cycle and will add only more burden onto a group that's trying to get a new business off the ground. We have to look at that, listen to that, and make sure ideology doesn't trump evidence. That means monitoring with small businesses what's happening across the province and making decisions intermittently, annually, on the basis of new information. Albertans are looking for real leadership from the government to create an environment for job creation. Instead, they're getting a convoluted tax credit scheme that David Dodge, the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Corporation of Edmonton, and the Canadian Federation of Independent Business all are doubtful can work. Surveys by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, in fact, indicate that as many as 1 in 5 small businesses will be forced to lay off staff this year. The report also noted that tax and regulatory costs are a major area of concern for small business owners. That could be alleviated without significant harm to our budget. This is why we've asked, argued, and begged to either lower or even eliminate the tax burden on small businesses. Let them do what they do best: create jobs and diversify our economy. With respect to incentives for new clean green technology, the oil sands sector is among the most innovative, research-oriented, and technologically advanced sectors on the planet. These are companies that have shown time and again that the impossible can be done. We have supported a carbon levy if revenue neutral, and extra money goes to clean technology, with extras going to a predictable base for infrastructure funding across the province. Companies and residents will benefit financially in the longer term from directing funds to new clean technology, energy conservation, and strengthen Alberta's energy sector for decades to come. In closing, Mr. Speaker, in the final analysis, the budget has much potential to address the needs of Albertans and cure our budgets of its over-reliance on volatile resource revenues. What's missing is a serious commitment to a debt repayment plan and to a review of existing spending for real opportunities for efficiency. As someone who's worked in the healthcare system, it's clear to me that there are many, many dollars if the planning for healthcare, shifting to early intervention, primary care in the community, home care in the community, there are millions of dollars to be saved by getting people out of the hospital and investing more in community and primary care. Sadly, the opportunity has been missed and will remain on the resource revenue roller coaster for years to come. I cannot support the budget as is today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.